Welcome back to the Mega Talks podcast. The year is almost over. Yes, another one is almost behind us and leading into 2022. Last year, one of my goals, or you can call them New Year's resolutions, what have you, I made it a point to do a podcast every week, specifically on Mondays. Why Mondays? Well, go back and check out the first podcast, the first mini talks that I've done. So the series of podcasts I've done every Monday are labeled as mini talks because they're under 15 minutes, unless they included a guest, and it was probably about a show lasted an hour and a half, somewhere around in there. So that puts in the can 52 podcasts, one every week. And that's something I adhered to, something I stuck to. But at the turn of the year, the turning of the calendar, another day from December 31st to January 1st, we all celebrate the new year, or most of us celebrate the new year. And some start celebrating in different ways than others. Some have their New Year's resolutions that they start working on before the new year's done. Now, I've heard less and less about people's New Year's resolutions as, the years move on. And one of the reasons I found that is because people make these resolutions, they don't bother to write them down or keep track of them in any type of way. So that by the time the year ends, they kind of lost focus on the things that they even wanted to do. The things that they had in mind that they wanted to do, they've forgotten those. Usually that is because 3 days into a year and they hadn't even started on the things they said they wanted to do. I've always been trying to stay ahead of the game. If I make a goal or resolution for myself, I try and start that right away. It's like if I have any resolutions for 2022, I'm not just going to wait for the calendar to change. I'm going to start that resolution in the moment as soon as I can. Now, if your resolution depends on like time and it has to be done in a certain amount of time, or specifically has to start in the next year, then maybe that's a little bit different. And it's something I think people need to get used to is coming up with a resolution at any time, a goal at any time, not just waiting until you turn the calendar to start a new goal. Some people look at it as a new lease on the year. I'm starting the year over. This year I'm going to do it right. This year I'm going to get better at this. It's a good time to pause, and it's a good time to kind of measure your success or your failures in the past. You have that separation there that it kind of gives you that reset that you need, that mental reset that you need. But 365 days into a year, and is it time for a reset then, or is it time for a reset after 24 hours? Is that something that you could condense down into a week? I think people are used to that. Every Monday, they usually complain about Mondays coming up. So that's kind of the reset point for the week. Now, do we condense that down a little bit more? Maybe you do a half a week. Maybe you do Sundays and Wednesdays, and you kind of reset. Maybe we get down to where every 2 days, every 48 hours, we work on goals, or we reset after 48 hours. Even 24 hours. Just keep cutting that in half. We got 24 hours. You have down to 12 hours. You have down to 6 hours. If you keep cutting those in half and you keep resetting and you keep establishing new goals, maybe boundaries, evaluating, always critiquing the things that you do, you keep cutting that stuff in half and you're going to get more detailed, and you're going to find yourself in a better position to have more success. And even if that means, you're working on something, and that idea or whatever that you're working on is going to take you a couple of weeks to accomplish. It's like, are you going to constantly work on that? I've done a podcast just here recently about procrastination. And, procrastination comes into play about this. A lot of people, 365 days gives you a lot of time. It seems like a lot of time to do something. Maybe there's a specific class that you're looking to take. Maybe you want to enroll yourself into jiu-jitsu or something, but you give yourself 365 days to do something that takes 15 minutes. Enrolling in a class doesn't take that long. Or maybe you're completing a class. Maybe it's a college class or something. It's going to take a few weeks. Do you really need 365 days to execute on your plan? Do you need that long to execute on your plan? Long-term plans, short-term plans, same thing with goals. Which one are they? Long-term goals isn't something that you put in place just so you can take your sweet little time about it and be in your comfort zone. Because we know anything inside your comfort zone, you're not going to change and you're not going to grow. You have to have that stress. You have to have some urgency to help you grow. You have to have a challenge. You have to have that obstacle in order to receive some type of growth. You need adversity to propel you forward. If you don't have those things, then you're not going to grow. Will you have success? Maybe you have limited success. Do you have satisfaction? Maybe you have limited satisfaction. But do you live up to your potential? Do you produce? Do you serve up to your full potential? That may be scary for some. And if it's scary, that means that's a place that you need to be. You need to have that fear going in. You need to have that fear to drive you. That fear is one of the obstacles. That fear is usually the strongest obstacle for most people. So, coming into 2022, are you going to establish New Year's resolutions? Or are you going to establish like short-term goals that you can achieve daily, weekly? I think your resolutions that you're just taking a look at over the next week or so needs to be something that you can knock out up front. At least a couple of those goals needs to be something that you can start right now. A couple of those goals needs to be something on January 1 that you put into motion. But going out and celebrating the new year as you celebrated every other year that you hadn't achieved your goals is probably not a place that you want to start, because you're setting the tone for the whole year and what benefits come along with that. Think about the risk and the reward. Sometimes the higher the risk, the higher the reward. The less risk, the less reward. So some things to take a look at. Let me know your resolutions. Send me a message. Maybe next year in 2023, we'll take a look at those and see what you've achieved and what you haven't achieved. But I enjoy the podcast. Enjoy recording the podcast. Enjoy the comments, the feedback that I get on the podcast. I want to thank you guys for tuning in. Got one more in the tank before the year ends, so let's see where that takes us. And I'll get with you guys the next time here on the Mega Talks podcast.